The night is quiet. The city exhales. You are safe, and there's a story waiting to be told. One about money and mistakes, about power and pretending, about a bear named Paddington. They called him Paddington. It begins in the flickering dark of a club called Headquarters. The air here is thick, perfume and cologne swirling into low lights and velvet couches, which makes everything feel like it's happening in a dream half remembered. It is a place of illusion, and at the center of it all, Paddington, bathed in the cool, smoky blue of the club. His steps are unhurried, his eyes heavy. There's a precision to him, an elegance, a bear who understands the power of restraint, who knows that sometimes what you do not reveal is what holds the most weight. He is 23, Russian American, fluent in the language, but reluctant to use it. A little bit bitter, a little bit bored. Eating marmalade sandwiches from Tupperware. In the dressing room, cloaked in a fog of body spray. He smokes blunts with his best friend, Mr. Gruber. His fur sparkles like ice under the lights. Everything about him shimmers. Paddington has long since learned the work that it takes to create a fantasy. That night, the club's owner calls him over. A new client, someone with money, is asking for a dancer who speaks Russian. Paddington hesitates, but this is work, and hesitation does not pay. He walks towards the VIP booth, the velvet walls pulsing with music. The client is pale, young. Jonathan Brown, 21 years old, from Moscow. Jonathan tries to flirt in broken English. Paddington watches him stumble and laughs, and it feels different. It feels right to be two young people laughing in a room full of ghosts. Jonathan pays for a dance, then another. He places bills into the strap of Paddington's bikini, carefully, like he's handling something rare. Paddington smiles. He smiles at the pride of a job done well. He smiles because in this sea of men, broken and bent by time, he gets to talk to someone his own age, someone who hasn't yet been hardened, made lonely by the world, And when Paddington talks to Jonathan, he can pretend that he is that way too. Jonathan asks if Paddington works outside of the club, and Paddington gives the boy his number. And Jonathan, of course, will text. Soon, Paddington takes a car to the end of a long private drive. The house rises slowly into view. A mansion, crouched at the edge of Millbasin, standing guard over dark water and fresh snow. Paddington steps out, high heels crunching against the gravel. His breath clouds the air, but the cold does not reach him. He is here for a purpose. He is still in control. Inside, the opulence weaves through the quiet air. It wraps around the walls and settles on the marble like dust. White stone, chrome fixtures, a staircase curving like questions that will never be asked. Jonathan slides around the mansion in his socks. Like the silence is a sheet of glass he is trying to break. They sleep together, and when it's over, Jonathan hands him an envelope. Paddington asks, "Where does this all come from?" And Jonathan shows him who the Brown family really is. Oligarchs, billionaires, people with so much money that the bills Paddington holds matter as much as the envelope they sit inside of. He slips it into his bag. That's what he came here for. He knows that's what he came here for. But something catches in the air as he closes the door. He likes being there, insulated from the pain and monotony of his life by that endless, expansive silence. Jonathan invites him to a party, New Year's Eve. Paddington brings Mr. Gruber. They stand at the doorway of the mansion together. Music rolls down the halls like thunder caught in crystal. Mr. Gruber is amazed, and Paddington looks around with pride, proud that he is the one who opened this door. The air is sharp with perfume, powders, vodka. Jonathan moves through it all. He grabs Paddington by the hand, pulls him through the crowd. A sea of women in sparkling dresses. Young Russian men watching Paddington, knowing exactly what he's there for. Older men in the background, tending to the mess, already calculating the fallout. Paddington stays the night, and when he leaves the next day for work, Jonathan makes the offer. $10,000 1 week to be his girlfriend exclusively. Paddington doesn't flinch. He smiles. 15. They shake hands, and Paddington walks out of the mansion. Through the sea of housekeepers, cleaning up last night's wreckage. He struggles with the heavy front door, doing his job, just like they are. The days that follow feel like a movie someone else is directing. Paddington wakes in silk sheets, watches Jonathan play video games in a home without the constant sound of a train running outside. He runs around Brighton Beach with Jonathan's friends, his responsibilities drifting like smoke behind him. None of this belongs to him. And yet, for the first time in a long time, it doesn't feel like he's pretending. The hard exterior begins to dissolve, and underneath, just a young bear. And that, perhaps, is the most dangerous part of all. Because when the one who builds the illusion starts to believe in it themselves, when they begin to fall for the fantasy, that's when the edges blur. That's when the floor gives out. And by then, they're already in too far to land gently. Jonathan remembers he once had good ketamine in Las Vegas. So they go. The jet hums like a secret. Paddington looks down at the neon crawl of the strip. Through floor-to-ceiling windows in their penthouse suite, they lose tens of thousands of dollars gambling. It doesn't matter to Jonathan. Every moment costs more than everything Paddington has ever owned, ever held, combined. That night, Jonathan tells Paddington he loves him. And Paddington smiles, because he doesn't love Jonathan, but he loves this life without stress, without concern. And if he loves Jonathan's life, maybe he could love Jonathan too. But Jonathan says he has to return to Moscow. His family is calling him back. It's time to take things seriously. But there's a way to stay. If he gets married, he can get a visa, stay in New York, keep living like this. And he thinks maybe they could be happy together like they are now. They go to a wedding chapel with fake flowers and sticky floors. In an instant, they are married. They run through Vegas, smiling, kissing, each giving the other what they want, each getting what they want so much that it feels like happiness. Back in New York, Paddington quits headquarters. His coworkers cheer, some cry. The happy ending they all dream of, finally happening to one of them. His rival, Millicent, watches from across the dressing room. Her voice is flat, sharp as a needle piercing through silk. I give it 2 weeks, she says. Paddington doesn't flinch, doesn't turn back. Jealousy is a disease, he calls, already halfway out the door. Stepping out of the world of the club into a world of sable coats and diamond rings, of falling snow watched from high balconies, his reflection layered over the bay, moving seamlessly from one illusion into another. But in Russia, the storm has already begun. Jonathan's parents, they learn from the tabloids that their son has married an escort. They send their fixer, Sir Geoffrey Wilcott, and his lieutenants, Mr. Curry and Phoenix Buchanan. Wilcott is distinguished, but worn, a man whose voice always sounds tired from cleaning up messes he didn't make. Curry is louder, brutal, the kind of man who doesn't apologize, as though he has something to prove. And Phoenix, quiet, watchful, someone who doesn't speak much, but always hears everything. They arrive at the mansion without warning. Jonathan tries to get Paddington to leave with him. He's frantic, pleading, but Paddington is confused. Hasn't all of this been a good thing? The parents are flying in. The storm is already on its way. Curry is at the door, calling Paddington a hooker, something to be ashamed of. Jonathan runs, and Paddington is left behind, alone. Curry runs after Jonathan. Phoenix makes his way inside. No offer of an explanation. The air changes. The walls close in. The room tilts. And Paddington, heart pounding, looking around at the freedom closing in like a prison cell, does the only thing he knows how to do. the illusion shatters. He fights. Paddington isn't just the words they throw at him. An escort, a stripper. He's an animal, and he has learned how to attack. Phoenix moves in from behind, wrestles him onto the couch. Paddington bites him, claws at him. Phoenix ties his wrists with a phone cord. It bites into his fur. He screams, snarls, spits. Phoenix gags him with a red scarf, cashmere catching at the corners of his mouth. His body stills, his eyes burn. Curry returns. They sit across from him. They accuse him of manipulation, of extortion, of being a mistake. Paddington tries to speak, but the scarf holds him quiet. So he glares, breathes hard through his nose, and lets rage fill him. Lets rage burn over the disappointment, the heartbreak. His arms are freed. Then he strikes, swings. Blood spatters across the rug. He's screaming now, sobbing, throwing anything within reach. But eventually, they pin him down. Not with fists. Not anymore. Just with silence. Just with stillness. They hold him there like a problem no one wants to solve. Wilcott appears in the doorway. He doesn't yell. He just sits across from Paddington, quietly, deliberately. He explains that this is a fight Paddington cannot win. He asks for the ring. Paddington looks down at his hand, at the weight he tried to believe in. He slips it off. His fingers tremble. Wilcott takes it. His voice is firm. He tells Paddington that none of this is real. That Jonathan is a child. That all of this, the marriage, the mansion, the life, was a mistake. A lie that Paddington believed. Wilcott tells him this was a green card marriage, and Paddington can get a green card marriage fee, $10,000, to walk away. An annulment. No mess. A clean break. Paddington stares at him, breathing hard, hands trembling, his voice hoarse. He says, not without seeing Jonathan, "I need to talk to my husband." They take him searching, not out of kindness, not out of fairness, just out of necessity. They have to find him too. And so they drive through Brighton Beach in winter. Gray snow, slush melting on sidewalks, bitter wind sweeping across sand. Neon signs blink overhead as they move through candy shops, billiard halls, late-night restaurants. Paddington leads them through all the places he'd only just discovered, through a life he'd only just begun living, now retraced in reverse, like a dream playing backwards, somehow turned into a nightmare. Jonathan is always one step ahead. He was there, he was here, then he wasn't. A ghost in every place they just missed him. Paddington sits in the back of Wilcott's car, staring out the window, wondering what this would look like if it weren't happening to him. They stand on the boardwalk, wind slicing across the ocean. Paddington's sable coat, his armor against the world, isn't warm enough. Without a word, Phoenix hands him the red scarf. Across the city, Jonathan staggers into a room of velvet, a cocoon of warm lighting, body spray, soft bodies, headquarters. Whispers travel through the dressing room. Paddington's husband is here. Millicent's eyes light up. Mr. Gruber watches. Paddington's phone begins to buzz. Jonathan is at headquarters, the place where it all began. They move fast. Paddington's heart slams against his ribs, like it's trying to escape. Upstairs, the music is louder. The lights are darker, and in the red glow of the VIP booth, there he is, Jonathan, laid back on velvet cushions, eyes glassy, and on top of him, shimmering with loose bills, Millicent. Paddington steps forward, calling Jonathan's name. He doesn't move. Jonathan. This time he opens his eyes. Recognition flickers, then fades. Paddington demands answers, demands a reason, demands something. But Jonathan seems far away, too far. Every promise they made receding into just another thing that was bought, enjoyed, discarded. Jonathan says nothing. They drag him out. Millicent follows, mocking. Paddington turns back to her, and they fight, rolling on the floor, nails breaking, voices climbing, dancers gathering to watch. They're pulled off of each other. Paddington is kicked out. They all are. And he walks away. He can never come back. As if he could have. As if that would have ever been possible. Wilcott parks outside the courthouse. They sleep in the car. Jonathan is drunk. Paddington is silent. Neither of them touches the other. The city exhales. The sun rises. Morning comes, as gray and lifeless as the fluorescent lights of the courthouse. Paddington sits beside Jonathan, refusing the annulment, refusing what he has been forced to do. The judge barely looks up. The marriage occurred in Nevada. The court has no jurisdiction. For all the effort, all the work to get there, to beat the ticking clock of a jet arriving from Moscow, it's all turned away, dismissed. Jonathan is still married, and the Browns have landed in New York. They drive in silence to the private terminal, a quiet cathedral of glass and steel. The Browns are already there. Mrs. Brown, impeccably dressed, storms toward her son, yelling words in Russian, sharp enough to slice bone. Jonathan hangs his head, ashamed, a child, just like they said he was. Paddington steps forward toward her, still hoping, somehow, that this can be salvaged. He introduces himself in careful Russian, trying to sound worthy of the life he's already lost. Mrs. Brown responds in English that this marriage is not real, that it will never be accepted, that Paddington's Russian is embarrassing. Phoenix watches, his quiet face pained. They begin to board the plane. Phoenix waits on the stairs. Jonathan follows his mother without a glance. Paddington lingers on the tarmac, begging Jonathan to talk, to fight for them, until Jonathan snaps. Of course they're getting a divorce. The illusion, held by a thread, breaks as Jonathan thanks Paddington for making his last trip to America so fun. And Paddington stands there, seeing it all for what it was. Just something fun. His whole life torn apart, just for someone else's fun. Paddington doesn't move, doesn't blink. He stands at the foot of the jet stairs, staring out into the frozen distance. Phoenix watches, waiting for him to move. Mrs. Brown leans out, ordering him to board. Paddington refuses. He'll get the divorce, but he wants a lawyer, a settlement. For a moment, there's silence. Phoenix smiles, just slightly, like something is finally right. Mrs. Brown descends, slow, smiling. She leans over Paddington's shoulder and threatens him. Threatens to take away everything he has, to destroy his life, the lives of his friends, his family, leaving him with nothing. Paddington's face crumples. Not a collapse, but a soft, slow folding inward. He looks down, says nothing. Mrs. Brown looks at Phoenix and winks. Whether or not it was a bluff, it was too easy. Paddington boards the plane. The door closes, and he watches as the last piece of the fantasy grows smaller and smaller as he disappears into the clouds. Paddington, Phoenix, Wilcott, and Curry sit in the back of the plane, sharing vodka, united now in how these strange, cruel people hold the strings of their lives. In the front of the cabin, Jonathan and his parents argue. He calls Paddington a mistake, and Paddington sees him clearly, sees him for what he is, and he yells it out from the back of the plane. Pathetic, small, selfish. They land just before dusk. The desert is empty, gutted of illusion. The divorce center is in a strip mall, a different world from the glittering hope of the Vegas Strip. A blinking open sign, folding chairs, clipboards. Jonathan signs the papers without looking up. Without saying a word, Paddington signs too, without hesitation. Just disgust. Then Phoenix speaks. He says what no one else will. that Paddington is owed an apology. The Browns refuse. These are not people who apologize, not people who think about those they hurt, not even for a second. Paddington snarls at Mrs. Brown that her son hates her, that her son married an escort just to spite her. He throws the scarf at her, throws the sable coat too. Like a bad memory, he's stripping away. Phoenix takes Paddington back to New York. There's no jet this time, just a commercial flight. Packed rows, a baby crying behind them. No vodka, no champagne, just 2 plastic cups of water and the weight of a lifetime lived in a single night. The mansion is quiet when they return. Outside, snow falls, soft and slow. Inside, Paddington showers, looking around at the marble, the beauty. One last time before it's gone, forever. They sit on the couch, listening to the news of a storm about to hit, smoking together. It was my birthday yesterday, Phoenix says. They smoke in silence. 2 people who went through everything, with no one seeing them. But there are no stakes left, no contracts, no illusion. Just the 2 of them sitting in the aftermath of someone else's dream. The next morning, they drive through Brooklyn in silence. The streets are hushed, buried in fresh snow. Everything softened, made still, as if the story already ended, and they're just passing through the credits. They park outside Paddington's apartment. The roar of the train cuts through the silence. Sharp, familiar, just as he left it, as though nothing changed, as though the world didn't notice what was lost inside it. Phoenix doesn't say anything. He just places something in Paddington's hand. The ring. Paddington stares at it. It's warm from Phoenix's palm. He doesn't put it on. He doesn't throw it away. He just holds it. The one part of this story he got to keep. The one part he can still decide what to do with. Paddington looks at Phoenix, really looks at him, at the man who held him down, and at the only person who defended him. He leans over, unbuckles Phoenix's belt. Phoenix shifts, confused, uncertain, but he doesn't stop Paddington. Paddington climbs onto him, slowly, takes control the only way he knows how. Phoenix lets it happen. His hands stay still. His eyes search Paddington's face for something he can't find. He tries to kiss him, and then Paddington explodes, slapping, punching. A scream bursts from his chest, like something that had been caged too long. Phoenix flinches, takes the blows, caught off guard. He scrambles to block him, but not to fight back. He grabs Paddington's wrists. Paddington collapses, sobbing, crushed, wordless. And Phoenix holds him, just holds him, until the storm passes. Outside, the snow keeps falling, soft, relentless, indifferent. It wraps around Paddington, who does not move, who stays still, still breathing, still real.